They say marriage is about trust. What they don't tell you is that trust can shatter like a cheap wine glass hitting concrete, and once it's broken, you can't unsee the cracks. My name is Kellen Brooks, and I'm 42 years old. I fix computer security problems for a living, which means I spend most of my days thinking like a criminal. It's amazing how useful that skill becomes when your wife starts acting like one. Vanna and I have been married for 15 years. We share 2 kids, 3 streaming subscriptions, and what I thought were 0 secrets. At least, that's what I believed until last Tuesday when she got that text. I was sitting at our kitchen table, laptop open, debugging a client's firewall when her phone buzzed. The screen lit up, and I caught a glimpse of the message preview. We need to talk, privately, tonight. The sender, Eliot Drake. Now, Eliot Drake is Vanna's boss at the advertising agency where she works. He's also the kind of guy who drives a Porsche and wears suits that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. The kind of guy who thinks the world revolves around him because, frankly, it usually does. Who's texting? I asked, keeping my voice casual while my fingers continued typing. Vanna grabbed her phone faster than a cat pouncing on a mouse. Just work stuff. Nothing important. Nothing important? Right. Here's the thing about being in IT security. You develop a sixth sense for when someone's lying. It's the same instinct that tells you when a system has been compromised. The signs are subtle, but unmistakable once you know what to look for. Vanna's tells were becoming clearer by the day. The way she angled her phone away from me when texting. The sudden interest in working late. The new perfume she claimed was a sample from the drugstore, but smelled like it cost more than our car payment. I might be late tonight, she said, not looking up from her phone. Big campaign presentation tomorrow. Sure, I replied. I'll handle dinner with Maya and Jax. Maya and Jax are our 13-year-old twins. They're smart kids, maybe too smart for their own good. They notice things. Like how Mom's been working late 3 nights a week for the past month. Like how she started dressing up for meetings that used to be casual. After Vanna left that evening, I sat in my home office staring at my computer screen. I could have let it go, could have trusted my wife of 15 years, could have believed that her boss just needed to discuss quarterly projections over dinner at the most expensive restaurant in downtown Chicago. Instead, I did what I do best. I started digging. Finding someone's location isn't as hard as people think, especially when they are using family-shared Apple accounts and have never bothered to turn off location services. Within 10 minutes, I had Vanna's exact coordinates. She wasn't at the office. She was at Chez Laurent, a French place that charges $50 for a piece of fish. I grabbed my car keys. The drive downtown took 35 minutes in traffic. I parked across the street from the restaurant and waited. Through the large windows, I could see them at a corner table. Vanna was laughing at something Eliot was saying, her hand resting on his arm. That laugh. I knew that laugh. It was the same one she used to give me when we were dating, when I was funny and charming instead of just the guy who fixed the Wi-Fi and took out the garbage. They sat there for 2 hours. 2 hours of intimate conversation, shared dessert, and body language that screamed everything I didn't want to acknowledge. When they finally stood to leave, Eliot helped her with her coat. His hand lingered on her shoulder. I followed them outside, staying in the shadows across the street. They walked to the parking garage together, talking quietly. At Vanna's car, they stopped. Eliot leaned in close, said something that made her smile, then kissed her. Not a friendly peck on the cheek. A real kiss. The kind married people give their spouses, not their bosses. I stood there in the cold Chicago evening, watching my wife embrace another man, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. The Kellen who trusted blindly, who assumed the best in people, who believed in happily ever after, that guy just took a long walk off a short pier. The new Kellen, the one born in that moment, had different priorities. I drove home and waited. Vanna arrived at 11:30, claiming the presentation had run long and they'd grabbed a quick bite afterward. She smelled like expensive wine and Eliot's cologne. "How was your evening?" she asked, kissing my forehead like nothing had changed. "Quiet," I said. "The kids finished their homework. Maya's got a math test tomorrow." "That's nice." She was already heading upstairs. "I'm exhausted. See you in the morning." I waited until I heard the shower running, then opened my laptop. If Vanna thought she was playing a game, she was about to learn that I'd been studying the rules a lot longer than she had. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The first thing I did was check our joint bank accounts. Nothing unusual there, but I set up alerts for any transactions over $50. Next, I installed monitoring software on our home router. Every device on our network would now log its activity. I know what you're thinking. That's paranoid, invasive, maybe even wrong. You're probably right. But here's what I learned in 15 years of marriage and 20 years in IT. People who have nothing to hide don't act like they're hiding something. Over the next week, the evidence piled up like snow in a Chicago winter. Late-night texts that made her smile in ways I hadn't seen in years. Emergency meetings that coincided with gaps in her location data. Credit card charges at places she claimed never to have visited. The breaking point came on a Friday afternoon. I was working from home when Vanna called. "Hey, honey, I need to work through the weekend. Big client emergency." In the background, I could hear music. Not office music, restaurant music. "That's too bad," I said. Maya was hoping you could help with her science project. "I'll make it up to her next week. Love you." She hung up before I could respond. I checked her location. She was at a hotel bar downtown, the same hotel where the agency sometimes puts up important clients. I grabbed my jacket and drove downtown for the second time that week. The hotel bar was dimly lit and expensive, the kind of place where a beer costs $20 and they call it a craft brewing experience. I found a seat at the far end of the bar with a clear view of the seating area. Vanna and Eliot were at a high-top table in the corner, leaning close together like conspirators. She was wearing the red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year, the one she said was too fancy for anywhere we ever go. I ordered a whiskey and activated the voice recording app on my phone. The bartender was chatty, which gave me an excuse to stay longer. I nursed my drink and watched my wife plan her future with another man. After an hour, they got up to leave. I waited until they were in the elevator, then followed. The elevator stopped at the 7th floor. I took the stairs and arrived just in time to see them disappearing into room 712. I stood in that hallway for 10 minutes, staring at the door, processing what I just witnessed. Then I went home to my kids and ordered pizza for dinner. "Where's Mom?" Jax asked, loading his slice with extra cheese. "Working," I said. "She'll be home tomorrow." Maya looked up from her science textbook. "Dad, is everything okay? You seem different lately." "Smart kid. Too smart." "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just work stress." But everything wasn't fine. Everything was about to change in ways none of us could imagine. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat in my office and made a decision. I could confront Vanna directly, demand the truth, and probably end up divorced with joint custody and a hefty alimony payment. Or I could do what I do best: gather information, identify vulnerabilities, and execute a plan. Vanna thought she was playing chess while I played checkers. She was about to discover that I'd been playing chess all along. I just hadn't shown her my pieces yet. I opened a new document on my computer and started typing. At the top of the page, I wrote, "Project Ruin Her Kingdom." Then I got to work. The thing about revenge is that it requires patience. Most people want immediate satisfaction. They catch their spouse cheating and immediately start screaming, throwing things, calling lawyers. That's emotional. That's messy. That's exactly what your opponent expects. I'm not most people. Monday morning arrived with the kind of gray Chicago sky that makes you wonder if the sun is just a rumor. Vanna was back to her normal routine, making coffee and chatting about her weekend crisis like she hadn't spent Friday night in a hotel room with her boss. "The client loved our presentation," she said, buttering her toast. "Eliot thinks we might land the biggest account of the year." "That's great," I replied, not looking up from my laptop. "Really great." What I didn't tell her was that I'd spent my weekend doing reconnaissance. I'd learned some interesting things about Eliot Drake, like how he was married to a socialite named Lena who came from old Chicago money, like how his Porsche was leased, not owned, and he was behind on payments, like how his expense account showed regular charges at the same hotels where he'd been meeting my wife. Most importantly, I'd learned that Eliot wasn't as smart as he thought he was. He used the same password for multiple accounts, posted his location on social media, and had a habit of bragging about his conquests to his golf buddies. Men like Eliot always have the same weakness. They assume they're the smartest person in the room. They never consider that the quiet IT guy might be listening. After Vanna left for work, I made my first move. I called her office. "Hi, this is Kellen Brooks, Vanna's husband. I wanted to surprise her with lunch delivery, but I can't remember if she's in meetings today." The receptionist, bless her helpful heart, checked Vanna's calendar. "She's free from noon to 2. Should I tell her you called?" "No, I want it to be a surprise. Thanks." I hung up and smiled. Vanna had told me she'd be in client meetings all day. Strike one. Next, I accessed our joint credit card account and set up automatic payment alerts. Every transaction would now ping my phone immediately. Then I did something that might seem petty, but was actually strategic. I changed the password on our shared Netflix account. I know what you're thinking. Netflix? Really? But here's the thing about psychological warfare. It's the small, unexplainable annoyances that make people paranoid. When someone's already feeling guilty, they start seeing conspiracies everywhere. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanna. "Netflix isn't working. Did you change something?" I waited 20 minutes before responding. "Weird. Working fine for me. Maybe call customer service?" The beauty of this approach was its deniability. Technical problems happen all the time. Passwords get corrupted. Systems glitch. Who could prove it was intentional? That afternoon, I drove to Vanna's office building. I wasn't there to confront anyone or cause a scene. I was there to observe, to learn patterns, to identify opportunities. The building had a coffee shop on the ground floor with large windows facing the street. I bought a latte and settled into a corner table with my laptop, looking like any other remote worker passing the time. At 2:15, Vanna and Eliot emerged from the elevator together. They walked to his Porsche, talking animatedly. She got in the passenger seat. They drove off together. I followed at a distance, my heart pounding despite my efforts to stay calm. They went to a small cafe in Lincoln Park, the kind of place where people go to have private conversations away from prying eyes. I parked across the street and activated my phone's camera. The zoom wasn't great, but it was good enough to capture them sitting close together, holding hands across the table. Good enough to document the kiss they shared before getting back in his car. This time, I was ready. I'd installed a small GPS tracker under Vanna's car the night before, the kind parents use to monitor teenage drivers. Completely legal when it's your own vehicle. They drove to a different hotel. I watched them check in together, then went home to wait for Vanna's explanation. She arrived at 6:30 with a story about visiting a potential client site. She seemed nervous, checking her phone constantly and jumping every time it buzzed. "Everything okay?" I asked over dinner. "Fine, just work stress. This new account is really important." Maya looked up from her spaghetti. "Mom, why do you smell like hotel soap?" The silence that followed was deafening. Vanna's face went through several colors before settling on defensive. "I used the restroom at a hotel restaurant. They have fancy soap." Maya shrugged and went back to her pasta, but I caught the look she exchanged with Jax. The kids weren't stupid. They were starting to notice the inconsistencies, too. That night, after everyone was asleep, I made my second move. I accessed Vanna's laptop. She'd never bothered to change the password from our anniversary date, and installed monitoring software. Every keystroke, every email, every website visit would now be logged and sent to a secure server I controlled. I know it sounds extreme, but I needed evidence, not just for my own peace of mind, but for what was coming next. If this was going to end in divorce court, I wanted documentation that would make her lawyer weep. The next morning brought my first real breakthrough. Vanna's email monitoring had captured a message from Eliot. "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. When can we get away for a whole weekend?" Her response made my stomach turn. "Soon. Kellen's planning some work trip next month. We could go to that place in Wisconsin you mentioned." I sat there staring at the screen, processing the casual way she discussed betraying our family. There was no guilt in her words, no hesitation, just logistics and planning. That's when I realized this wasn't a moment of weakness or a midlife crisis. This was a calculated decision to replace me with someone she thought was better, someone richer, someone who could give her the life she felt she deserved. Fine. If Vanna wanted to play for higher stakes, I was happy to oblige. I picked up my phone and called my sister Clara. Clara tends bar at a place downtown and has a network of friends that would make the CIA jealous. More importantly, she's never liked Vanna. "I need a favor," I said when she answered. "What kind of favor? The legal kind or the fun kind?" "The information-gathering kind. What do you know about Eliot Drake?" Clara was quiet for a moment. "The advertising guy with the fancy car? I know his type. Why?" "He's having an affair with Vanna." "That manipulative witch? I knew she was up to something. What do you need?" "Everything. His habits, his hangouts, his weaknesses, and I need to know about his wife." "Lena Drake? She's actually pretty cool. Comes to charity events, tips well, doesn't act like she's better than everyone else. She deserves better than that cheating piece of garbage." "Can you arrange an accidental meeting? Somewhere public?" Clara laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Oh, little brother, you're finally ready to play hardball. I'll see what I can do." That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a credit card alert. Vanna had just spent $300 at a lingerie store. The same afternoon, she told me she was in budget meetings. I screenshotted the alert and added it to my growing file of evidence. Then I did something that felt both petty and satisfying. I ordered flowers to be delivered to her office. The card read, "For my beautiful wife, thanks for all your hard work lately. Love, Kellen." The psychological impact was immediate. Vanna called me 20 minutes after the flowers arrived. The flowers are lovely, but why today? Can't a husband surprise his wife? It's just unexpected. I've been thinking we should appreciate each other more. Life's too short, you know? The pause on her end was telling. That's really sweet, Kellen. But her voice carried a note of panic. Guilty people hate unexpected kindness from the people they're betraying. It makes them feel worse about what they're doing, which makes them more likely to make mistakes. That evening, Vanna was distracted and jumpy. She kept checking her phone and seemed unable to focus on anything for more than a few minutes. When Jax asked her to help with his math homework, she snapped at him for no reason, then immediately apologized. Sorry, honey. Mommy's just tired. Jax looked hurt and confused. Maya shot her mother a look that could have frozen Lake Michigan. After the kids went to bed, Vanna disappeared into the bathroom for an unusually long shower. I used the opportunity to check her phone, which she'd left charging on the kitchen counter. The messages between her and Eliot had been deleted, but I'd already captured them through the monitoring software. What I found in her browser history was more interesting: searches for divorce lawyers, asset protection, and how to prove spouse is hiding money. So that's how she wanted to play it. She was planning to leave me and wanted to make sure she got as much as possible in the settlement. The affair wasn't just about romance, it was about upgrading her entire life at my expense. I put her phone back exactly where I'd found it and went to my office. I had work to do. By midnight, I'd accomplished 3 things. I'd transferred half of our savings account balance to a separate account in my name only, completely legal since it was joint property. I'd documented every piece of evidence I'd gathered so far, and I'd started researching Eliot's business dealings. What I found was fascinating. Eliot's agency was struggling financially despite its prestigious reputation. Several major clients had left in the past year, and there were rumors of management problems. Most interesting of all, there were whispers about irregularities in expense reporting and client billing. I made a note to dig deeper into that angle. Men like Eliot often cut corners when they think no one's watching. If I could find evidence of professional misconduct, it would give me leverage beyond just the affair. My phone buzzed with a text from Clara. Coffee tomorrow at 2 p.m. Corner table at Starbucks on Michigan Avenue. Lena Drake will be there. Accidentally? I smiled and typed back, Perfect. Thanks, sis. The game was accelerating, and all the pieces were starting to move. Vanna thought she was 3 steps ahead, but she was actually 3 steps behind. She just didn't know it yet. Tomorrow, I would meet the other betrayed spouse and find out just how far Eliot's deceptions went. Something told me Vanna and her lover were about to discover that they'd picked the wrong people to underestimate. The quiet IT guy was about to show them what real strategic thinking looked like. Lena Drake was nothing like I'd expected. When I walked into the Starbucks on Michigan Avenue at exactly 2 p.m., I spotted her immediately. Not because she looked like a typical wealthy socialite, but because she looked tired. Genuinely, bone-deep tired in a way that expensive clothes and perfect makeup couldn't hide. Clara was already there, sitting at the counter with her laptop open, playing the role of a freelancer grabbing afternoon coffee. She caught my eye and nodded toward the corner table where Lena sat alone, staring at her phone with the expression of someone reading bad news. I ordered a coffee and approached her table, putting on my most apologetic expression. Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you, but are you Lena Drake? She looked up, startled. Yes? I'm Kellen Brooks. My wife Vanna works with your husband at the agency. I think we met briefly at the Christmas party last year. Recognition dawned in her eyes. Oh, right. Kellen, your wife is the account director. That's her. Listen, this is awkward, but I was supposed to meet a client here and they just canceled. Would you mind if I sat down? I hate drinking coffee alone. It was a weak excuse, but she gestured to the empty chair across from her. Of course, I was just passing time anyway. Up close, Lena was even more tired looking. There were dark circles under her eyes that concealer couldn't quite hide, and her hands shook slightly when she lifted her coffee cup. Everything okay? I asked. You seem stressed. She laughed, but it came out bitter. Is it that obvious? I'm sorry. I'm not very good company today. Work problems? Marriage problems. The words slipped out before she could stop them. She immediately looked embarrassed. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. You don't even know me. Sometimes it's easier to talk to strangers, I said gently. And for what it's worth, I might understand better than you think. She studied my face for a moment. What do you mean? This was it, the moment where I either gained an ally or made an enemy. I pulled out my phone and showed her one of the photos I'd taken of Vanna and Eliot at the cafe. I mean that our spouses have been having an affair for at least 6 weeks. The color drained from Lena's face. She stared at the photo, then at me, then back at the photo. When was this taken? Last Tuesday. There are others. Her hands were shaking more now. I knew something was wrong. He's been so distant, so secretive, always working late, always having client emergencies. But seeing it, I'm sorry. I know this is a shock. Actually, it's a relief. She looked up at me with eyes that were suddenly clearer. I've been thinking I was going crazy, questioning everything, wondering if I was just being paranoid. At least now I know I'm not. We sat in silence for a moment while she processed the information. Finally, she spoke again. What are you planning to do? That depends. What do you want to do? Lena's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. I want to ruin him. Both of them. Is that terrible? If it is, then we're both terrible people, because that's exactly what I want too. Over the next hour, Lena and I shared information like intelligence officers planning a covert operation. She told me about Eliot's recent behavior changes, his mysterious business trips, and his sudden interest in reorganizing their finances. I showed her the evidence I'd gathered and explained my monitoring setup. You're very thorough, she said, impressed despite the circumstances. It's what I do for a living. Find security vulnerabilities and exploit them. And you think Eliot and Vanna are vulnerable? I think they're overconfident. They assume we're too trusting, too passive, too grateful for their attention to fight back. That's their weakness. Lena nodded slowly. Eliot's always underestimated people. It's his biggest flaw. What do you know about his business dealings? Any irregularities? Her expression darkened. You mean besides the fact that he's been using company credit cards for his affair? I handle our personal finances, so I see the statements. Hotel charges, restaurant bills, gifts that never made it home to me, all billed to the agency. This was even better than I'd hoped. Do you have copies of those statements? Every single one. I've been documenting everything for weeks, thinking I might need them for a divorce attorney. We might need them for something else first. I explained my plan. It was simple in concept, but would require careful timing and coordination. We were going to expose their affair in the most public, humiliating way possible, while simultaneously destroying their professional reputations. The agency's annual client appreciation event is next Friday, Lena said. All the major clients will be there, plus the board of directors. If we're going to make this public, that's perfect. Can you get me into the event? I'm on the planning committee. I can add you as my guest. We exchanged contact information and agreed to meet again in 2 days to finalize the details. As I walked back to my car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. That evening, Vanna came home with news that she'd be working late again on Thursday. Big presentation on Friday, she explained. The whole team needs to prep. Of course, I said. Anything I can do to help? She looked surprised by the offer. No, but thanks. You're being really supportive lately. We're a team, right? Your success is my success. The irony wasn't lost on me, but Vanna seemed genuinely touched. She kissed my cheek and went upstairs to change clothes. While she was in the shower, I checked the monitoring software. She'd been texting Eliot all day, making plans for their Thursday night work session and discussing the client event on Friday. Most interesting was a message she'd sent to her friend Jessica. I think Kay is starting to suspect something. He's being weird, too nice, asking too many questions. Maybe I should speed up my timeline. Speed up her timeline? I screenshotted the message and added it to my file. Whatever Vanna was planning, she was getting nervous about my behavior. Good. Nervous people make mistakes. Thursday arrived with unseasonably warm weather for Chicago in March. I took the day off work, telling my clients I had a family emergency that required my attention. I wasn't lying. At noon, I drove to the hotel where Vanna and Eliot usually met. I'd called ahead and reserved the room next to their usual suite, using a fake name and paying cash. The walls in these old hotels are thin, and I wanted to record their conversation. They arrived at 1:30, just as I'd predicted based on their text messages. I activated my recording equipment and waited. What I heard over the next 2 hours was worse than I'd imagined. They weren't just having an affair, they were planning my complete destruction. Vanna had already consulted with a divorce attorney and was preparing to claim that I'd been emotionally abusive and financially controlling. She was going to demand alimony, child support, and half of everything we owned. Once the divorce is final, we can be together openly, Eliot said. I'll leave Lena and we can start fresh. What about your business? Won't the scandal hurt the agency? I'm planning to leave anyway. Start my own firm with the clients I can poach. Your divorce settlement will give us the capital we need to get started. They were going to use my money to fund their new life together. The audacity was breathtaking. But the most damaging part of the conversation came near the end. "I've been moving some agency funds around," Eliot said, "setting up accounts that Lena and the board don't know about. By the time anyone notices, we'll be long gone." "Is that legal?" "It's a gray area, but we'll be in the Cayman Islands by then, so it won't matter." Embezzlement. They were planning to steal from the agency and flee the country. I had everything I needed. That evening, Vanna came home late and exhausted, claiming the presentation prep had run longer than expected. She went straight to bed without eating dinner. I stayed up until midnight, preparing for Friday's client event. I created a presentation that looked like a standard agency slideshow, but contained some very non-standard content. I also made several phone calls to people who would be very interested in what I'd learned about Eliot's financial activities. Friday morning, Vanna left early for the office, claiming she needed to set up for the evening event. She kissed me goodbye and told me not to wait up. "This is going to be a long night," she said. She had no idea how right she was. At 6 p.m., I put on my best suit and drove downtown to the Palmer House Hotel, where the agency was hosting their client appreciation event. The ballroom was filled with Chicago's advertising elite, all dressed in expensive clothes and making small talk over overpriced cocktails. I found Lena near the registration table, looking stunning in a black dress that probably cost more than my car. She smiled when she saw me. "Ready for this?" she asked quietly. "More than ready." The evening's program included dinner, awards presentations, and a slideshow highlighting the agency's recent successes. Eliot was scheduled to give the keynote speech at 8:30. He would never make it that far. At 8:15, I excused myself from my table and walked to the audiovisual booth at the back of the ballroom. The technician was taking a smoke break, leaving his equipment unattended. I plugged my USB drive into the presentation computer and uploaded my special slideshow. Then I returned to my seat and waited. Eliot took the stage at exactly 8:30, looking confident and self-assured in his expensive tuxedo. He began his speech with the usual corporate platitudes about teamwork and excellence. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to share some highlights from our most successful year ever." He clicked his remote to advance to the first slide. Instead of a bar chart showing revenue growth, the screen filled with a photo of him kissing my wife in the hotel parking garage. The ballroom went silent. Eliot stared at the screen in horror, clicking his remote frantically, but the slideshow had been programmed to advance automatically. The next slide showed them entering the hotel together. The one after that contained excerpts from their text messages, including discussions of their planned escape to the Cayman Islands. The fourth slide was a recording of Eliot's voice discussing the agency funds he'd been embezzling. Chaos erupted. Board members were shouting questions, clients were demanding explanations, and Vanna was pushing through the crowd toward the exit. She didn't make it. Lena intercepted her near the door. "Leaving so soon, Vanna? The presentation's just getting good." I watched from across the room as my wife's face went through every emotion, from shock to rage to panic. She looked around the ballroom, spotted me, and started pushing through the crowd in my direction. By the time she reached me, hotel security was already escorting Eliot from the building. The board members were huddled in an emergency meeting, and several clients were making angry phone calls. "You bastard," Vanna hissed. "You've ruined everything." "No," I said calmly. "You ruined everything. I just made sure everyone knew about it." She raised her hand to slap me, but I caught her wrist. "I wouldn't do that if I were you. There are a lot of cameras here tonight." The fight went out of her suddenly. She looked around at the staring faces, the whispered conversations, the cell phone cameras pointed in our direction. "This isn't over," she said. "Yes, it is. You just don't realize it yet." I walked away, leaving her standing alone in the middle of the ballroom while Chicago's advertising community gossiped about the scandal they just witnessed. Outside, Lena was waiting for me by the valet stand. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like I just won the first battle of a war." "What's the next battle?" I smiled and pulled out my phone, which was buzzing with notifications. The recording of Eliot's confession was already in the hands of the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, the Illinois Attorney General's office, and 3 investigative journalists I knew from my consulting work. The next battle is making sure they never recover from this one. The valet brought my car, and I drove home to my kids, who were waiting up to hear about my evening. "How was the party, Dad?" Maya asked. "Educational," I said. "Very educational." I didn't tell them that their mother's life as they knew it had just ended, or that mine was about to begin. The aftermath of Friday night's disaster spread through Chicago's advertising community like a virus. By Saturday morning, the story was on 3 local news websites and had been shared on social media more than 10,000 times. The headline on adage.com read, Chicago agency executive exposed in embezzlement and affair scandal. I was drinking my morning coffee and reading the coverage when Vanna came downstairs. She looked like she hadn't slept, which was probably accurate since she'd spent most of the night on the phone with lawyers and crisis management consultants. "We need to talk," she said, pouring herself coffee with shaking hands. "I'm listening." "Not here. The kids will hear." Maya and Jax were still asleep, but I nodded and followed her to the backyard. It was a crisp March morning, and our breath made small clouds in the cold air. "How long have you known?" she asked. "About the affair? 6 weeks. About the embezzlement? 3 days." She closed her eyes and took a shaky breath. "I suppose you think you're very clever. I think I'm very thorough. There's a difference. You've destroyed 2 marriages, ruined Eliot's career, and humiliated me in front of everyone I work with. Are you proud of yourself?" The question was so absurd that I almost laughed. "Vanna, you destroyed our marriage the first time you got in bed with another man. You ruined Eliot's career when you helped him plan to steal from his company. I just made sure there were consequences." "I never helped him steal anything." "Really, because I have recordings that suggest otherwise." Her face went pale. "You recorded us?" "I recorded everything. Every conversation, every text message, every hotel visit. Did you really think I was just going to sit quietly while you planned to take my children and half my assets to fund your new life with a criminal?" Vanna sank into one of our patio chairs, looking defeated. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. "How was it supposed to happen? You were going to divorce me, claim I was abusive, take everything I'd worked for, and disappear to the Cayman Islands with your boyfriend. Did I miss anything?" "You don't understand. Eliot and I, we have something special, something real." "You have something, all right. A federal investigation. The FBI raided his office yesterday afternoon." That got her attention. "What?" "Financial Crimes Unit. Apparently when you steal money from a company that has federal contracts, it becomes a federal matter. Eliot's looking at serious prison time." Vanna buried her face in her hands. "This is a nightmare. For you, maybe. For me, it's justice." She looked up at me with eyes full of hatred. "You think you've won, don't you? You think you can just destroy my life and walk away. I think I can protect my children and my assets from people who were planning to steal them. If that destroyed your life, maybe you should have made better choices. I'll fight you in court. I'll take the kids. I'll make sure you never see them again." "With what money? Your boyfriend's accounts are frozen. You're about to be fired from your job, and your reputation is ruined. What lawyer is going to take your case?" The truth of that statement hit her like a physical blow. Vanna had always been the type of person who used other people's resources to get what she wanted. Without Eliot's money and connections, she was just another unemployed adulteress with no leverage. "Besides," I continued, "Maya and Jax aren't stupid. They've been watching you lie to them for weeks. They know something's wrong. They're children? They don't understand adult relationships. They understand honesty, and they understand that you've been choosing someone else over them every time you sneak off to meet your boyfriend." That hit home. Vanna's face crumpled, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "What do you want from me?" she asked quietly. "I want you to move out, today. I want you to agree to joint custody with the kids living primarily with me, and I want you to sign a postnuptial agreement waiving your rights to alimony and dividing our assets 70-30 in my favor." "That's insane. No judge would approve that." "Any judge would approve it once they see the evidence of your affair and your involvement in Eliot's embezzlement scheme. Plus, I've already moved most of our liquid assets to accounts you can't access. You can fight me in court if you want, but you'll lose everything and end up owing your lawyers more money than you'll ever see." Vanna stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "When did you become so cold?" "When I realized that the woman I married was planning to destroy me to upgrade her lifestyle. This isn't cold, Vanna. This is survival." She was quiet for a long moment, processing her options. Finally, she spoke. "I need time to think." "You have until noon. After that, I file for divorce and release everything to the media. Your affair will be front-page news, and everyone will know you were planning to help Eliot steal money and flee the country. You wouldn't do that to the kids. I wouldn't have to. You already did it to them when you chose your boyfriend over your family." I went back inside, leaving her sitting in the cold morning air. The twins were awake now, making breakfast and getting ready for their Saturday soccer games. "Where's Mom?" Jax asked. "Outside. She'll be in soon." Maya looked through the kitchen window at her mother's hunched figure. "Is she crying?" "Probably." "Are you guys getting divorced?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I sat down at the kitchen table and looked at my children, really looked at them. They were growing up fast, too fast, and they deserved honesty. Maybe. Would that bother you? Maya and Jax exchanged one of their twin looks, the kind of wordless communication that had always amazed me. Not really, Maya said finally. You guys haven't been happy for a while. And Mom's been acting weird, Jax added. Always on her phone, always going out, always making excuses. We're not stupid, Dad, Maya said. We know something's been wrong. I felt a surge of pride mixed with sadness. My kids were resilient, perceptive, and stronger than I'd given them credit for. They were going to be okay, no matter what happened next. Whatever happens between your mom and me, it's not your fault, and we both love you very much. We know, Jax said. But if you do get divorced, can we stay here? This is our home. That's the plan. At 11:45 a.m., Vanna came back inside. She looked composed but defeated, like someone who'd finally accepted an unpleasant reality. I'll sign your agreement, she said quietly, but I want to tell the kids myself. That's fair. She gathered Maya and Jax in the living room and explained, in age-appropriate terms, that she and I were having problems and she would be moving out temporarily. She didn't mention Eliot or the embezzlement or the federal investigation. She just said that sometimes adults make mistakes and have to face consequences. The twins took it better than I'd expected. They hugged their mother and promised to call her every day, but they didn't ask to go with her. They didn't even ask why she was leaving. They already knew. By Sunday evening, Vanna had packed her things and moved into a furnished apartment across town. The house felt different without her, quieter, but also more peaceful. The constant tension that had filled our home for weeks was finally gone. Monday brought new developments. Eliot had been arrested on federal embezzlement charges and was being held on $1 million bond. The advertising agency had fired him and was cooperating with the FBI investigation. Vanna's employment had been terminated for cause, which meant no severance package and no unemployment benefits. Lena called that afternoon with an update on her situation. I filed for divorce this morning, she said. My attorney says it should be straightforward since Eliot's assets are frozen and he's facing criminal charges. I'll get the house, the legitimate investments, and most of our liquid assets. What about the stolen money? The FBI recovered about half of it from offshore accounts. The agency will get that back, but the rest is gone. Eliot spent it on hotels, gifts, and other expenses related to his affair with your wife. I'm sorry you got caught up in all this. Don't be. I'm better off without him. And frankly, I'm grateful you had the courage to expose what they were doing. I might never have found out otherwise. That evening, I was helping Jax with his math homework when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Vanna's number. What do you want? I answered. I need money. The apartment requires first month, last month, and a security deposit. I don't have enough in my checking account. That sounds like a personal problem. Kellen, please. I have nowhere else to go. You should have thought about that before you decided to have an affair with a criminal. I'm the mother of your children. Yes, you are. And every decision you made over the past 2 months put those children at risk. You were planning to take them to a foreign country with stolen money. What do you think would have happened to them when the FBI caught up with you? She was quiet for a moment. I never thought about that. No, you didn't. You never thought about anyone but yourself. So you're just going to let me be homeless? You're not homeless. You have an apartment. You just need to figure out how to pay for it like every other adult in the world. I hung up and turned off my phone. Maya was standing in the doorway, having overheard the conversation. Was that Mom? Yes. Is she okay? She will be, eventually. She just needs to learn how to take care of herself. Maya nodded thoughtfully. Good, it's about time. Out of the mouths of babes. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat in my office and reviewed everything that had happened over the past week. Vanna's life was in ruins, Eliot was facing federal charges, and I had successfully protected my children and assets from their scheme. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like the end of something that had been important to me for 15 years. I wasn't the same person I'd been 2 months ago. The trusting, optimistic husband who believed in second chances and the power of love had been replaced by someone harder, more calculating, more suspicious. Maybe that was necessary. Maybe that was growth. Or maybe it was just what happened when someone you trusted tried to destroy you. Either way, there was no going back. The old Kellen was gone, and the new one had work to do. Because while Vanna and Eliot's public humiliation was complete, their legal troubles were just beginning, and I intended to make sure they faced every consequence their actions deserved. The game wasn't over, it was just entering a new phase. 3 weeks after the agency event, Chicago's legal system began grinding through the wreckage of Vanna and Eliot's choices. Federal prosecutors had charged Eliot with embezzlement, wire fraud, and money laundering. His bail had been revoked after prosecutors argued he was a flight risk, so he was sitting in the Metropolitan Correctional Center waiting for trial. Vanna, meanwhile, was discovering that being unemployed and unemployable in Chicago's tight-knit advertising community was its own kind of prison. I was in my office Wednesday morning when Clara called with an update from her network of bartenders and service industry workers who see everything that happens in the city. "Your ex-wife was at Murphy's Tavern last night," she said. "Apparently she's been making the rounds, trying to find someone who'll hire her. No luck so far." "I'm not surprised. Word travels fast in that industry." "She was also asking about you. Specifically, she wanted to know if you were dating anyone yet." "That was interesting." "What did you tell her?" "I told her it was none of her business. But Kellen, she looked desperate, really desperate, like someone who's running out of options." "Good. You sure you're okay with all this? I know you loved her once." I considered the question. Did I feel bad about Vanna's situation? Not really. She'd made her choices with full knowledge of the potential consequences. The fact that she hadn't considered those consequences was her problem, not mine. "I'm fine, Clara. Thanks for the update." After I hung up, I checked my monitoring software one last time. I'd kept it running on Vanna's devices even after she moved out, partly for legal reasons and partly because I wanted to know if she was planning any new schemes. What I found was both pathetic and infuriating. She'd been in contact with a gossip blogger who specialized in Chicago society scandals. The messages showed she was trying to sell her story, claiming she was the victim of an abusive husband who'd orchestrated an elaborate revenge plot. The blogger had asked for proof of the abuse allegations. Vanna's response was a masterpiece of creative fiction, describing years of emotional manipulation and financial control. She painted me as a controlling monster who'd isolated her from friends and family, monitored her every move, and threatened her when she tried to leave. The problem with her story was that it was easily disproven. I had 15 years of social media posts, photos, and public records showing a normal, happy marriage. I had testimony from friends and family who'd never seen any signs of abuse. Most importantly, I had recordings of her planning to destroy me financially and flee the country with stolen money. I forwarded the messages to my attorney with a note about potential defamation claims. Then I called the blogger directly. "This is Kellen Brooks," I said when she answered. "I understand you've been talking to my ex-wife." "Mr. Brooks, I was hoping you'd call. I'd love to get your side of the story." "My side is simple. Everything she told you is a lie, and I can prove it. If you publish any of her allegations without verifying them, I'll sue you and your publication for defamation. The damages will be substantial." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm informing you that publishing false allegations about me would be legally actionable. What you do with that information is up to you." She was quiet for a moment. "Can you provide documentation to refute her claims?" "Absolutely. I have recordings, financial records, witness statements, and other evidence that prove she's lying. I also have evidence that she was planning to commit federal crimes. Are you sure you want to stake your reputation on her credibility?" I'll need to review everything before making any decisions about publication." "That's wise. I'll have my attorney send you a package of materials this afternoon." I hung up feeling satisfied. Vanna's attempt to control the narrative had just backfired spectacularly. Instead of generating sympathy, she'd created another legal problem for herself. That afternoon, Maya came home from school with news that made my protective instincts flare. "Mom called me during lunch," she said, dropping her backpack by the front door. "She wants me and Jax to meet her at that coffee shop downtown after school tomorrow." "What did you tell her?" "That I'd have to ask you. But Dad, she sounded weird, like really sad but also angry at the same time." I didn't like the sound of that. Desperate people make unpredictable choices, and Vanna was definitely desperate. "Did she say what she wanted to talk about?" "She said she wanted to explain some things about what happened between you two, and she said she might be going away for a while." "Going away?" That was concerning. I pulled out my phone and checked Vanna's location. She was at her apartment, but that didn't mean much. If she was planning to run, she wouldn't do it from a traceable location. "Maya, I need you and Jax to stay close to home for the next few days. No walking anywhere alone, no meeting friends without telling me first." "Can you do that? Are we in danger?" "Probably not. But your mom is under a lot of stress right now, and I want to make sure everyone stays safe." Maya nodded seriously. She was old enough to understand that adult problems sometimes created risks for children. That evening, I called my attorney and explained the situation. "She might be planning to take the kids and run," I said. "Is there anything we can do to prevent that?" "I can file for an emergency custody order tomorrow morning. Given her association with Eliot's criminal activities and her current financial situation, a judge would probably grant it. Do it. Kellen, are you sure this is necessary? It's a pretty aggressive move. She was planning to take my kids to the Cayman Islands with stolen money. I'm not taking any chances. Thursday morning brought unexpected drama. I was dropping the twins off at school when I noticed a familiar car parked across the street. Vanna's silver Honda, with Vanna behind the wheel, watching the school entrance. I parked and walked over to her car, tapping on the driver's side window. She rolled it down, and I could see she'd been crying. What are you doing here, Vanna? I wanted to see my children. You can see them during your scheduled visitation. You can't just lurk outside their school. I'm not lurking. I'm parked on a public street. You're stalking. There's a difference. She laughed bitterly. Everything is stalking or harassment or abuse with you, isn't it? I can't even watch my own kids walk into school without being accused of something. You can watch them walk into school during the times we agreed on. You can't show up randomly and scare them. I'm not trying to scare anyone. I miss them, Kellen. I miss my life. For a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married 15 years ago. Vulnerable, sad, genuinely remorseful. Then I remembered the recordings of her planning my destruction, and the sympathy evaporated. You should have thought about that before you decided to throw it all away. I made a mistake. Can't you forgive me? I can forgive you, but I can't trust you, and I won't put my children at risk because you're having regrets. I walked back to my car and drove to my office, but I couldn't concentrate on work. Something about Vanna's behavior felt off, more desperate than usual. I called the school and asked them to keep an eye out for her, then called my attorney to check on the custody order. It's been filed, he said. The hearing is scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. In the meantime, the school has been notified that only you are authorized to pick up the children. Good. I think she might be planning something. What kind of something? I don't know, but she mentioned going away for a while to Maya yesterday, and she was watching the school this morning. It feels like someone who's about to make a desperate move. I'll see if we can get the hearing moved up to tomorrow morning. At 3:30, I was waiting outside the twins' school when my phone rang. It was Maya calling from inside the building. Dad, Mom is here. She's in the principal's office, arguing with Mrs. Henderson about taking us home. Stay where you are. I'm coming in. I found Vanna in the principal's office, red-faced and agitated, demanding that her children be released to her immediately. Mr. Brooks, the principal said when she saw me, your wife is insisting that she has the right to take Maya and Jax home today. My ex-wife doesn't have custody rights that override our existing agreement, I said calmly. The children live with me, and I'm the one authorized to make decisions about their daily schedule. This is ridiculous, Vanna snapped. They're my children, too. Yes, they are, and you can see them during your scheduled visitation time this weekend. I might not be here this weekend. There it was, the confirmation that she was planning to leave. Where are you going? I asked. That's none of your business. It is if you're planning to take my children with you. The principal cleared her throat. Perhaps we should call the police to sort this out. That won't be necessary, I said. Vanna, you need to leave, now. I'm not leaving without my kids. Yes, you are, because if you don't, I'm calling the police myself, and you'll be arrested for attempted kidnapping. Vanna's face went through several emotions before settling on defeated rage. She looked at Maya and Jax, who were standing in the doorway looking scared and confused. I love you both, she said. Remember that, no matter what anyone tells you about me. Then she pushed past me and left the building. I drove the twins home in silence, processing what had just happened. Vanna was definitely planning to run, and she'd wanted to take the children with her. The question was where she thought she could go that would be beyond the reach of federal investigators and family court judges. That evening, while the kids did homework, I called Lena to see if she had any insights into Vanna's possible plans. Eliot had contacts in several non-extradition countries, she said, places where wealthy Americans go when they want to disappear. But Vanna doesn't have the resources to get there, let alone establish a new life. She might not be thinking rationally. Desperate people rarely do. Be careful, Kellen. If she's really planning to run, she might do something stupid first. Stupid turned out to be an understatement. At 2 a.m., my home security system activated, waking me from a deep sleep. Someone was trying to break into my house through the back door. I grabbed my phone and crept to the bedroom window that overlooked the backyard. In the moonlight, I could see a figure hunched over the door lock, working with what looked like a screwdriver. It was Vanna. I called 911, then woke up the twins and moved them to my bedroom, away from the back of the house. What's happening, Dad? Jax whispered. Someone's trying to break in. The police are on their way. Is it Mom? Maya asked quietly. I didn't answer, but my silence was answer enough. The police arrived within 5 minutes, their flashing lights illuminating the neighborhood. I watched from the front window as they arrested Vanna in my backyard, her hands zip-tied behind her back as she shouted about her rights and her children. The neighbors came out to watch the spectacle, and I realized that Vanna's public humiliation was now complete. She'd gone from respected advertising executive to unemployed adulteress to criminal defendant to desperate burglar in the span of 2 months. As the police car drove away with my ex-wife in the back seat, I felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. Not enough to forgive her or take her back, but enough to recognize that she'd destroyed herself as much as I'd destroyed her. Maya appeared beside me at the window, watching the police car disappear down our street. Is she going to jail? Probably, for a while. Good, Maya said firmly. Maybe now she'll learn that actions have consequences. I looked down at my 13-year-old daughter, impressed by her maturity, and saddened that she'd had to learn such harsh lessons so young. Yes, I said, maybe she will. The next morning brought news that Vanna had been charged with attempted burglary and violation of a restraining order I hadn't even known existed. Apparently, her attempt to take the children from school had triggered an automatic protective order. She was being held without bail, pending a psychiatric evaluation. The custody hearing that afternoon was a formality. With Vanna in jail and facing multiple criminal charges, the judge awarded me full custody with no visitation rights until she completed court-mandated counseling and demonstrated stability. Your Honor, Vanna's public defender said, my client is the victim of an elaborate revenge scheme orchestrated by her ex-husband. She's been systematically destroyed by a man who couldn't accept that their marriage was over. The judge reviewed the evidence I'd submitted. Recordings of Vanna planning to steal money and flee the country, documentation of her affair, proof of her attempts to defame me to the media, and security footage of her trying to break into my house. Counselor, the judge said dryly, if your client is a victim, she's a victim of her own choices. Custody is awarded to Mr. Brooks, with supervised visitation for Ms. Brooks to be determined after she completes court-mandated programs. And just like that, it was over. Vanna's kingdom, her marriage, her career, her reputation, her freedom, lay in ruins. Eliot was facing decades in federal prison. I had my children, my home, and my self-respect. That evening, I sat on my back porch with a beer, watching Maya and Jax play basketball in the driveway. They seemed lighter somehow, as if a weight they hadn't even realized they were carrying had been lifted. My phone buzzed with a text from Clara. Saw the news about Vanna's arrest. You okay? I typed back, better than okay, free. And for the first time in months, that was absolutely true. The quiet IT guy had won his war, not through violence or cruelty, but through patience, planning, and an unwavering commitment to protecting what mattered most. Sometimes the good guys do win. They just have to be willing to stop being nice and start being smart. The kingdom was ruined, the queen dethroned, and justice served. Game over.